Battlefield 6 is a game we needed for a long time. Medal of Honor is a dead franchise, Rainbow Six Siege has gotten worse with its balancing over the years, and Call of Duty yeah, this is a far cry from the OG Black Ops and Modern Warfare days. So, Battlefield 6's open beta just happened over the weekend, and I played quite a bit of it across both PC and console, and there's a lot to say. After all, Battlefield as a franchise has been in a rut for quite some time, with the last good one being Battlefield 1, but the last genuinely great one being Battlefield 4, or some would argue 3. The last two being Battlefield 5 and 2042, both were highly controversial, albeit for different reasons, but the core issue was it felt like the developers were actively ignoring fan requests. And that bled over into the gameplay, removing in-universe uniformed soldiers for their best Inglourious Basterds impressions with 5, and then ditching the class system entirely and turning every character into a trendy hero shooter character in 2042. It felt like the era of immersive, authentic, genuine military shooters was over, at least for major companies like EA and Activision. After all, there were a couple attempts by smaller studios to recapture the Battlefield experience and aesthetic with World War III and the latest Delta Force. But personally, both of these games lacked something. A certain je ne sais quoi, if you will, that made it hard to hold my attention for long. Well, that and the massive cheating problem both these games have. Now, maybe this is because the bar has been lowered so far down it's practically under sea level. But after my time with Battlefield 6's open beta, I really do think Battlefield may be back. Now, is it perfect? No. Are there problems they can and probably should address? Absolutely. But the good, at least for me, far outweighs the bad here. And if they can nail the launch, this will probably be one of the biggest comebacks in shooter history. So, let's get the performance stuff out of the way. As I said, I played this beta on both console and PC, mostly PC. And I gotta say, I was pleasantly surprised on both fronts. For reference, my PC build is an RTX 4060 graphics card with an i5 12400F processor with 32 gigs of RAM. While not top of the line, generally my rig outperforms my console, I would say 70 to 80% of the time. I also generally game at 1080p, although after getting a new 1440p monitor, I have been playing at that resolution for the last month or so. So normally, I'm not too averse to using DLSS upscaling if I need to. However, the Battlefield beta ran surprisingly well for me. Without any upscaling or frame gen on mostly high settings, I was averaging around 70 to 80 FPS a match, with minor brief dips whenever massive effects happened all at once. Which in today's modern day of games almost requiring upscaling of some sort, I'm looking at you, Mafia of the old country. It was nice to have my game look good and run well before applying any upscaling or frame gen.
Impossible.
The console version, while yes, running with lower settings than my PC version, still looked great on a 4K TV at a virtually locked 60 FPS on quality mode, which was impressive to see. Now, for some reason, when in quality mode, the firing range ran at 30 FPS. I'm not sure if this is a bug or not, because it seems strange that a full 32 versus 32 multiplayer map where everyone's running and shooting and debris is flying everywhere is running at 60, but somehow this enclosed firing range is not. I don't know. It seems kind of odd if intentional, but apart from that, the console experience was just as fun as my experience on PC. Now, in the spirit of transparency, the maps available in the beta are all the game's smallest maps compared to the full release, so who knows, maybe the FPS will tank on these bigger maps like Operation Firestorm or one of the California maps, so this is definitely a grain of salt situation I think we should be vigilant of. Moving on, I want to talk about the classes. As any Battlefield player knows, classes are a major part of Battlefield's identity. It's why so many people, myself included, were pissed when 2042 dropped it in favor for their poor attempt at hero shootering Battlefield. Now, they did inevitably shoehorn it back in, but it really didn't do much because a big aspect of why the class system works so well is, well, because of the visual identity of each class. When staring at a soldier across the map, you should be able to make out their class at a mere glance. Are they running with ammo belts around their neck or with a large backpack? Chances are, they're a support. Do they have ghillie material on them? Likely a recon, etc., etc. And being able to distinguish them quickly was paramount to understanding who to prioritize taking down first. If you're in a tank, you'd like to prioritize the engineer as they are the direct threat to you. An assault would like to prioritize supports as they can revive those he kills. There is so much utility and nuance to this system that simply shoving it back into 2042 didn't work because there was no visual class identity. I mean, for fuck's sake, you had a riot shield using soldier, heavily armored, and a petite woman with a wingsuit under the same exact class.
Here's a steak knife. Go kill yourself.
So thankfully, Battlefield 6 brought back the classic system and kept their visual designs distinct. Great. Off to a fantastic start, guys. Absolutely loving this. But what does the visual design and monikers matter if the classes don't feel any different to play? Well, thankfully, they nailed it here. Each of the 4 classes have a distinct way of playing and everyone feels satisfying. Assault no longer has the medic bag and the defibrillator. They are no longer the de facto healer class, which honestly never really made sense to me, as an assault class is supposed to be the class designed to push through and pave the way for his squad mates to break through enemy lines, and that's what he does here. He still retains the grenade launcher, which can be utilized to flush out enemy infantry or create entry points in buildings, and in addition he has a weapon sling allowing him to bring a second primary weapon, generally a DMR or a shotgun, which we'll talk about in a later section. And finally, his combat stim, which slightly reduces incoming damage and increases movement speed. Now, the way they balance this class is by giving him the lowest ammo count if you decide to use the weapon sling to bring a second primary weapon, forcing you to rely on your support teammate to keep you supplied when you run low on ammo. Their primary weapon of choice is the assault rifle, which, I don't know. At least the M4A1 felt pretty inconsistent to use, and I ended up switching to the carbines whenever I played the class. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with how this class plays, although there are some things that need a little tuning, which again we'll talk about in the balance and feedback section. Next up is my boy Engineer. I love Engineer. It's the class I love playing the most ever since Bad Company 2. Being the terror of enemy vehicles and the angel to ally vehicles is practically crack to me, and there is little in these games more satisfying than finally shooting that pesky helicopter or jet out of the sky with a Stinger or Igla. Their weapon of choice is the small but efficient SMG, capable of throwing out tens of rounds at a fast pace within close to medium range if you burst fire. And I gotta say, SMGs feel really good in this beta. Surprisingly good. As in previous games, I generally use carbines as Engineer because the SMGs never felt right to me. Naturally, as the Engineer, you have access to a repair torch to heal allied tanks or damage enemy tanks if you feel ballsy. And your gadget slots allow you to take up to 2 anti-vehicle weaponry. Now, here's where they actually change things up a bit. In previous games, you could only either bring an anti-tank or anti-air weapon at one time. The other gadget slot was reserved for anti-tank mines or a drone or what have you. But in Battlefield 6, for the first time as I can recall, you can bring both anti-tank and anti-air weaponry. Which is... I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how I feel about that. Making the decision to use the RPG or the small over the Igla or Stinger was something you had to take into account before you spawned in. Ideally, listening to what your teammates pinged on the map. Now, in the long run, this is probably for the best, but my worry is how are they going to make the other gadgets enticing for Engineer players to use over the 2 biggest threats to enemy vehicles. Overall, Engineer feels fantastic to play and is one of the highlights in the beta, bar none. Next, we got the other highlight, which is support, and oh boy, LMG users rejoice, because this is the best a support class has felt in a Battlefield game, period. Their signature weapon, of course, being the LMGs, which feel fantastic in this game. Powerful and heavy as they should feel, the support's job is to keep their team both healthy and supplied. Remember how I said the assault class was no longer the de facto healer? Now the support is, in addition to being the ammo supplier. Your bag is now a hybrid between the ammo bag and medic bag, healing and resupplying those who are near it. The support class also now has the defibrillators, to revive teammates quickly, as well as deployable cover providing defense for your team. Combine these abilities with the smoke grenade, and a god support can completely turn a game around. Even if you don't have the defibrillators equipped, which is currently impossible in this beta, you can still do the normal way of reviving, but much faster than a non-support player. Making the support class both the healer and resupplier was a great decision, as now they're even more valuable and enticing to play. Now, if only the players could actually, do their job and revive players when they can. I have been dealing with this for an upwards of 10 years! How do you guys still not get it, you brain dead? Overall, I don't have any complaints or notes regarding the support class compared to Assault or Engineer. It really feels like they nailed this class right out of the gate. Finally, we have the Recon. Do you love cozying up to a nice campfire, roasting a tasty marshmallow with the occasional double headshot to keep your dopamine going? Well, my friend, Recon is for you. So, Recon is obviously the sniper class, and anyone who's played Battlefield is intimately familiar with the Recon class. They're either the bane of the enemy team, raining headshot-flavored death upon them, or they're the bane of your team, barely doing fuck all and not getting their ass on the goddamn objective. So compared to previous games, Recon has been mostly untouched. Their weapon of choice is still the sniper rifle, capable of delivering high caliber rounds straight to the enemy's frontal lobe. Their gadgetry consisting of a TUGS, which is a device that spots nearby infantry for everyone on the map, C4 to either flush out hiding infantry, or if you're feeling particularly saucy, to help out with the destruction of enemy vehicles, and the respawn beacon, which allows you and your squad to have a secondary spawn point apart from captured points or other squad mates. Now, the respawn beacon will not be a part of the Recon's kit at launch. They said they are going to give it to the Assault class, which honestly makes more sense, as its intended purpose is to help flank a captured enemy point, and since Recons are barely if ever near the fight, all they would do is plant it near the spot they want to stay sniping in, which was annoying as all hell. Now, sniping over the years has gotten less and less complex to do in a Battlefield game, and it's the same here. If you were hoping for Battlefield 4's bullet drop, you're going to be disappointed, as the bullet drop while in here is nowhere near as intense as Battlefield 4, at least from what I've seen and played, because once again, they used the smallest maps in the game for this beta, so obviously this could change on a larger map. But overall, I never really minded this change personally, as Battlefield was never meant to be an intense, ultra-realistic military sim like Arma. It was meant to be a little more laid back than Arma, but more strategic and intense than your average Call of Duty game. Finally, the sweet spot mechanic introduced in Battlefield 1 makes a return here, which, in case you are unfamiliar, was a system in which single-shot rifles were able to do 100 or more damage if hitting the body of a target within a certain range, effectively allowing the player to one-shot without a headshot if they hit this so-called sweet spot. I don't really have an opinion on this mechanic, positive or negative, compared to other Battlefield players. For me, it's just sort of there, but I can see how Recon players would hate it, as it de-incentivizes skilled headshots. The sniper's quite possibly strongest ability has to be the ability to auto-spot enemy players when scoping in with the rifle, which is... I'm not sure about this one. Like, if it was relegated to the minimap only and required you to physically spot the target to get the Dorito over their head, I think that would be a bit better personally. Overall, the Recon plays exactly like you would expect it to, and is just as satisfying to play in this game as it was in previous games. Now, before we move on from classes, there is one more mechanic I want to briefly touch because it's something I've always enjoyed. In older Battlefield games, there used to be in-game incentives for your squad to remain alive by the means of class specs, which were passive buffs that would activate the longer your squad went without being wiped. And thankfully, it's back in Battlefield 6. The Assault has the Frontliner spec, which at level 0 negates ADS movement penalties, level 1 gives him an additional adrenaline shot, level 2 giving improved passive health regen and delay, with the final tier adjusting the combat stim to highlight enemy sounds and reveal nearby enemies with 5-second duration extensions with kills. The Engineer gets extra rockets, improved reload times for launchers, debilitating armor, which when damaging enemy vehicles, their repair effectiveness is reduced, and then an enhanced repair tool that heals allied tanks more efficiently. The Support gains the ability to allow teammates to grab health packs directly from their backpack when they interact with you, followed by health regen when reviving down players, after which you gain improved stats for all defensive gadgets, with their signature turning them into a mobile supply bag for 10 seconds and allows them to revive players in 2.5 seconds. Finally, the Recon starts with improved auto-spawning, which goes up to Wounding Shot, which reveals enemies and slows their healing when hitting the torso, 2 sniper headshots making players unrevivable, and finally giving them the ability to call in a UAV on their position, to both hide them and spot enemy combatants. Personally, I'm really happy this system is back, as it incentivizes your squad to actually work together as a team to stay alive and not play it like Call of Duty. Next, we're going to talk about gameplay, sound design, and level design. Gunplay has always been the thing that, while Battlefield has done well, it very distinctly didn't feel as easy to pick up as Call of Duty. For better or worse, Battlefield's gunplay has always had a bit of a learning curve. From bullet drop to recoil control to how different weapons handled, each gun basically had its own way of playing that you had to learn. And Battlefield 6 is mostly the same, albeit a bit casualized, which depending on the player is either a good or bad thing. So, starting with assault rifles, by far were the most disappointing for me. And I honestly couldn't tell if it was because of how they worked, or if there was some inconsistency to their damage output compared to other guns. In order to effectively utilize the assault rifles at mid to long range engagements, burst firing seemed to be the best way to ensure damage on a target, which makes sense. But for me, the M4A1, which to be fair, is the only assault weapon I used in the beta, felt off. Its recoil wasn't consistent enough to memorize. There were times in which I would dump an entire mag into an enemy, hit markers and all, and wouldn't even kill him. And then other times it only took 1 or 2 bursts, which could just be me hitting more vital areas, or maybe they were already low on health. I don't know. Overall, the assault weapons, at least the M4A1, definitely need some tuning, especially compared to the carbines. The carbines felt great. They sacrificed overall damage and bullet speed for less recoil and better control, which suited me just fine. AK-205, my beloved, ended up being my primary automatic weapon when playing assault, because it just felt better to use. The recoil, while lower, was more consistent, and I ended up getting more consistent kills with the carbines in general than the assault rifles. SMGs are also a lot better than previous entries, with the exception of 2042, where they were absurdly good. But fuck 2042, so we'll just ignore that. Despite having a higher fire rate than normal rifles, the SMGs were still fun to handle, and although I didn't get much time using them, every time I did, I was having fun. LMGs handle like you would expect, extended firing time with minimal recoil followed by long reload times, at least for the first LMG, as the second LMG in the beta sacrificed long reload time for increased vertical recoil. These guns are great for laying down suppressive fire to keep the enemy from advancing or healing. Once again, I didn't get too much time with them compared to assault rifles and carbines, so there isn't much I can really say here. Moving on to DMRs, I don't like them. At least the ones in the beta felt really bad to use. They kick like a mule and are inaccurate to all hell, and the starting ACOG scope for the first DMR is so bad. I opted to use iron sights over it because of how bad it felt. Now, granted, it's supposed to be a faster firing rifle compared to the Recon's normal bolt action rifles, but I don't know, I don't think I got a single kill with them compared to every other weapon in the game. I think they need a big adjustment in the final release, because I don't think a single person in my matches, enemy or friendly, was using them, which is a problem for a game like this if everyone would rather avoid an entire weapon class altogether. The one sniper rifle available felt great to use on the other hand. Heavy hitting and satisfying, the sniper rifles were always hard to use but satisfying to master in Battlefield games, and it's the same here. The only issue I really have with it is an issue I have with every game that does this, which is not auto-racking the next round. You see, when you fire a shot with a bolt-action round, you have to exit the scope so the next round can be racked. But you have to physically let go of the aiming button, or else it just won't do it. Why? Look, it would be one thing if I had to press a button to do the animation, but it's automatic when you aren't scoped in, so just force it to take me out of the scope and rack it. That's fine. It's a personal pet peeve that ultimately isn't a big deal, but I felt it was worth mentioning. Next up is shotguns and pistols. Pistols feel good, albeit the only one available right now does, so there isn't much to talk about here, but the shotgun is crazy good. Some would say too good. It's got good range, it hits like a truck at close range, and doesn't have a large amount of ammo to allow you to spend the majority of the match without needing a resupply. Now, there is some debate over the gun's one-shot kill range, which apparently most of the complaints are due to slug rounds, because when I used it, I didn't have slugs equipped. And I noticed I had to be considerably closer to get one-shot kills compared to those using slugs. So apart from slugs, I think the shotgun overall is well designed. Now, quite possibly, the biggest and best feature in this game, at least for me, is something they took straight from BattleBit: the ability to drag down players to safety before reviving them. Now, Just like 2042, squad mates can revive each other without being a support class, which I personally don't mind. But the thing that makes it work is this new dragging mechanic. So now when you go to revive a player, while holding the revive button, you can hold S on the keyboard or back on the left stick to physically move the body while reviving, which is amazing design and makes it more immersive to run out into sniper fire to revive your friend who was cut down in his prime. God, this right here, man, I love this mechanic so goddamn much. I could talk on and on about it, so let's just move on. Sound design. Sound design is a core aspect of any good Battlefield. This is probably the biggest avenue that'll get you immersed the fastest, and whoever did the sound design for Battlefield 6 deserves a goddamn medal. From bullets whizzing past, to the sound of crumbling debris from a destroyed building, to the screeching of jets flying over, Battlefield 6's sound design is probably the most impressive aspect of the game. I cannot gush enough about the sound design here, but I do have one suggestion to players and one note to DICE. And that is for players to switch it to war tapes under audio mixing and for DICE to make war tapes the default mixing. The difference between default and war tapes is insane, and it blows my mind war tapes isn't the default, as it perfectly blends the sounds of gunfire, tank treads, buildings blowing up, and soldier callouts into a mesmerizing cacophony of sounds that just stays with you long after the match. Now, level design. The beta gave us 3 maps to play on in its first weekend: Siege of Cairo, Liberation Peak, and the Iberian Offensive, all of which were supposedly the full game's smallest maps, which I assume they used to force more engagements so they can get better feedback on infantry gameplay. But overall, I liked all of these maps. Although if I had to rank them, I would put Cairo at the top and Offensive on the bottom, with Liberation Peak in the middle. Cairo in particular gave me intense Bad Company 2 vibes in its design. Plenty of alternate routes to allow you to flank enemy points. The majority of the buildings were designed in a way to give infantry an advantage while not making you completely safe, which is also a highlight of the buildings in Liberation Peak, and is what made Bad Company 2 so good. Having buildings be almost completely destroyable made it so that you're never truly safe inside a building, and encourages you not to stay indoors the entire match. Knowing a tank can completely obliterate your sanctum at any notice added a certain tenseness to the game that other games just don't have. As a multiplayer map, Siege of Cairo flows well in both Conquest and Breakthrough, which were the modes I played primarily. Both sides felt evenly balanced, and it never felt like it was a guaranteed win if I spawned on a certain faction. Looking at you, Operation Metro, you piece of fucking shit. The matches in which I had the most consistent fun were on the Cairo map. Now, Liberation Peak, also known as Sniper's Haven, was also a fun time on Conquest, as it was the only map in the beta that had helicopters and jets, which both feel okay. They still lack the weight that Battlefield 4's helis and jets had, but were fun enough to handle. However, the default controls for helicopters on controller are awful. Seriously, DICE? The bumpers are for ascension and descension? I had to go and turn it to Legacy, so throttle up and down was tied to the left stick, as it's supposed to be. The jets were also fun to use, but I only really got to use it once, so there's really not much I can really talk about in that regard. Anyway, Liberation Peak on Conquest is a blast for mostly the same reasons I have for Cairo. Good flanking points, plenty of destructible buildings, giving off that Bad Company 2 vibe once again. But on Breakthrough, this map is kinda mixed, because it would either be a complete stomp, or my team would barely be able to move forward and cap even the first point. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the map is built for snipers. So, most people play sniper on this map. The problem is Breakthrough requires your team to advance by capturing points. And if most of your team is hanging back sniping, you can guess how the match is going to go. Finally, we have Liberian Offensive, which is honestly, it's fine. It's an okay Battlefield map, but sometimes it felt more like Call of Duty than Battlefield, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that vehicle presence on this map is very minimal due to its urban design, which isn't bad in itself, but it does feel like this map was made more for domination or King of the Hill compared to Conquest and Breakthrough, which, by the way, I'm just going to say it, those modes suck. If I wanted to play Call of Duty, I play Call of Duty. Overall, I think the map choice for the beta was good, but I do wish we got a bigger scaled map so people could see what the true Battlefield experience is like. We do know there is a new map coming in the second weekend, so hopefully it'll be a large-scale map. The final thing we're going to talk about is UI balancing and feedback. The UI design of this game is probably the weakest aspect. I don't like the Netflix Hulufication of main menus that has been happening for the last, I would say, 5 years or so. I hated it in COD, and I don't like it here. The biggest problem is the homogenization of every shooter needing their UI to look exactly alike, and I don't understand why. Is it unreadable? No, not exactly. But I'd like my menus in games to be diverse and reflect the game itself, and these UIs just don't do that. Especially when they decide to bury important things in their options. For example, did you know there's an infantry compass? There is, but it's off by default. And in order to turn it on, you have to go into options, go down to graphics, go down to HUD, enter advanced HUD settings, scroll down to infantry HUD, and turn on infantry compass. What the fuck? Okay, first off, the compass should be on by default. Being able to tell your squad mate the number and direction you were killed from is incredibly important for a game like Battlefield. And secondly, if you are going to keep it off by default, don't fucking bury it in 3 different submenus. Seriously, what is it with games today and submenus? Another change people have an issue with, but I don't really, is moving the conquest meter from the top of the minimap to the top of the screen. Although, if I had to guess, this was probably to make it easier for players to be aware of points their team has or lost. But, I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle on this issue. It doesn't bother me exactly, but I can see why people have an issue with this. So, I don't know if they want to introduce a system where you can change it back to the classic HUD, or if they're adamant about keeping it this way. I don't know. That's going to be dependent on DICE and player feedback, right? Next, I want to talk about closed weapons. Closed weapons were an intrinsic part of Battlefield and class identity, something they did away with in 2042. God, that fucking game just keeps coming back up. And initially, in Battlefield Labs, they were not bringing it back in 6. Although, after the community kept screaming at them, they decided to include both closed weapons and open weapon playlists. The problem is, and hopefully this is just with the beta and not the full game, is there is only one closed weapon playlist, and it's Conquest. Every other mode forces open weapons, which I do not like. Like I said, maybe in a full release, every mode will have 2 playlists, and this won't be an issue. But I have to talk about what's here and not what's going to be here. And if this is the extent of the closed weapon system, this is the problem that leads into the next topic, which is the server browser. Server browsers in Battlefield have always played a pivotal role. While Battlefield games have always had matchmaking, the server browsers offered a way for people with more than 4 friends who want to play together to join on the same server, as well as future-proof the games to ensure a steady player pool. For example, matchmaking in Battlefield 4 today, it's just useless. It'll search for 5 minutes and then throw you into an empty map. And that's where the server browser came in. You could search for both official and community-led servers that were filled with people playing to this day, and it kept the community afloat. Another reason server browsers are so nice is that unlike normal matchmaking, servers either official or community had maps on a rotation, guaranteeing the player won't play the same map twice in a row. Now granted, this beta only had 3 maps, but because of the matchmaking system, more often than not, I was thrown into the same map I just finished playing on, and seldom on the other side, which can be annoying as all hell. Now granted, they did say there will be a server browser for Portal, which does have full XP progression, but I'm sorry, I don't think that's going to be enough. There are modes in 2042 you literally cannot queue for, because even though there are probably people who want to play it, because it's not enough, more often than not, you'll be thrown into a dead lobby and no one else will join. Whereas if there was a server browser, you could probably find at least 1 or 2 lobbies filled with people who want to play that mode consistently. No server browser became a huge problem in 2042, and I can absolutely see it becoming a problem here. Especially with the closed weapon playlists. And that's not even getting into the cheating problems. Community-led servers, on average, had less cheaters because they generally had mods who were vigilant in banning those who cheated compared to the official DICE servers. And even with the secure boot requirement, Battlefield 6's open beta had plenty of people cheating with aimbots, trying to proclaim, "Nah, I'm just that good!" Nah, dude. You're a tiny dick, miserable reprobate who's so ass at video games you have to resort to cheating because God forbid you actually put effort into anything in your pathetic. Anyway, a server browser with community servers could help skirt that for people. Now, in terms of balancing, as I said earlier, there's a couple things I think they can tweak. The shotgun should either have its range nerfed if it's the general shells that are one-shotting at long distances, or if it's the slugs that are doing it specifically. I don't know, maybe tweak the slug shell's damage a bit, seeing how they're supposed to have extended range. I don't know. Like I said, in my experience, I didn't feel the shotgun was too crazy. Maybe take it off the weapon sling for assault and replace it with an SMG. There's also the matter of the sniper glint being a little egregious, but they already said they're going to nerf it a bit in the full release, so that's good. Like I said, I think DMRs need a big tune-up as they're practically useless right now compared to every other gun in the game. I still don't know how I feel about engineers being able to bring both an anti-air and anti-tank weapon at the same time. So, if they're adamant about keeping it that way, maybe split the ammo between them. So instead of getting, let's say, for example, 3 RPG and 3 Stinger missiles, right? You will only get 1 or 2 each to compensate. Because, as I said before, I don't know how you're going to make the other gadgets more enticing than bringing both of these. Battlefield 6 is shaping up to be one of the biggest comebacks in shooter history, and after my time with the beta, I really do think Battlefield is in a great spot. But I've been through a Battlefield release before, which is why I'm still on the no pre-order train for this game. But everything I've played, everything they've shown, is looking to be one of the best Battlefield games in a long, long time. So, to answer the question posed by the thumbnail, yes, if all goes well, I think everything with Battlefield 6 is enough. That's going to be it for today's video. Thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, or subscribe if you feel so inclined. As always, to stay up to date on all things Crab, you can follow me on Twitter via the link in the description below. And if you're looking for a way to support the channel, you can consider becoming a member. For only 99 cents a month, you get permanent access to the community Discord, the Crab Shack, as well as emotes you can harass me with live on streams. But with all that out of the way, I will see you guys in the next video.